Hey everyone, this is Al McKay. Welcome to episode 34, where I get into the importance of having a mentor or many mentors. So that's it. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
Hi everyone, this is Al McKay. Welcome to episode 34. I'm going to get into the benefits and everything to do with getting a mentor, okay? And I'm going to freeball this a little bit. Unfortunately, this is one of the busiest weeks I'm going to have all year, and I've spent a lot of time writing a lot of really solid notes about something that I feel really strongly about, but I don't have time to sit down and organize all my notes. It's going to be all over the place, a bit off the cuff. And also, I'm going to try and hit my goal of trying to make a 30-minute episode, which never happens, but it's a good pipe dream to have. Couple things. So, first of all, this week, I've finally launched the mentorship for the second time, the Effects TD mentorship. So, couple things. This episode has nothing to do with it. It's kind of like episode 33 was my same week as my 33rd birthday. By the way, the industry drinks we hosted on Friday night were epic. A lot of people came. It was really, really cool turnout, actually. It was about 30, 40 people at one point, and I don't remember really getting home, so that's always a good thing too. So I managed to bring all the bottles of alcohol that were given to me, so thank you everyone who brought gifts. Kind of surprised I didn't leave them at the bar, as well as my credit card, but that was awesome. So I'm going to be hosting those last Friday of every month, so if you want to get on the list for that, just go to alanmckay.com/drinks, and that's just for LA people. Or if you think about visiting LA, you can subscribe and then unsubscribe afterwards. But basically, I'm just going to be sending out reminders as to where it is, when it is, all that good stuff. All right, and yeah, as I mentioned, this is not to do with the mentorship that I've launched this week, but the mentorship that I'm doing is really phenomenal. So another thing is that for everyone who was on the VIP list, I gave everyone a few days head start just because it fills up so quickly. But I did mention I've only sent one email out to the insiders VIP list just because I don't really want to ever sell to that list. I basically want to make it all about personal growth, us building our careers, and everything I do for that list is all exclusive stuff, typically things that I won't give out publicly. So, there's a lot of things that I'll share, but, I'm not going to go and put out here's my exact way that I will write a cover letter that's gotten me every job that I've ever done, or how to approach clients to get work, or a lot of really crafty kind of stuff that, I'm happy to share with, 1,000 people, but I'm not going to share with 20,000 people. So it's more the people who want to kind of take that initiative that I want to reward them. So I want to give that opportunity for people who, and there were a lot of you who were interested in 3D and kind of effects more specifically and want to push through and do some really amazing stuff. The mentorship was for a year, and so I'm going to be starting that on May 19, and that's right now about to open official doors. You can actually, if you're on the VIP list, you'll have already gotten access to sign up, so it's pretty cool. But that is, like I said, completely different to this. It's more about effects, but it's so cool, and I'm so proud of it. I'm just really excited, actually, to be able to jump in with that. And there's already a lot of familiar faces who are signing up from lots of different places within the industry, so it's quite cool. But this episode, nothing to do with that. It's more to do with how to, the benefits of getting a mentor. And I want to disclose a couple of things. One is that, what is a mentor? And more specifically, at least for me, and maybe I'm crazy, but in my mind, when I think of a mentor, I picture someone who's, younger and, the apprentice, and you've got someone who's the older person who's been there, done that. And that isn't really the case at all. It's more about you want to surround yourself with successful people. I always say, and I strongly believe this, like you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. And for me, like I've had times in my life that I'm really hungry, really ambitious, and I want to do so much. But I would have friends and other people in my life that would, first of all, wouldn't like change. So you mentioned like, hey, I want to, actually, I'll be really personal and share something. Like I had a girlfriend many, many years ago that I mentioned, we used to party a lot. I was like 23 or something. And I mentioned that, I wouldn't mind like taking a few months of like not partying, not drinking. I just want to go to the gym and get in shape and be healthy for a bit. And whenever I mentioned that, she would always get really, really mad. And I didn't really understand at the time why, but I think it became clearer later on that that's more the things that, the destructive habits that they have. And if you were to kind of move into a different circle where you're not doing those things, I think that they're more afraid that they might lose you because suddenly you're not in that rut with them that they kind of have that guilt associated with. And whatever it's going to be and whatever people you're with, like maybe they're happy with where they are. But if you're hungry to set bigger goals and get out of your comfort zone, not everyone's going to always adapt to what you're doing. And it's very easy to kind of pull someone back into your world when they're trying to do something much bigger. And in this case, you might want to do some really far out things and really cool things. And the people around you are, maybe they're happy to be like, yeah, I like my 9 to 5. Like what you're doing is ridiculous. Don't go and do extra training, or don't go and change your career and do something really that your heart is set on, because like, that sounds like a risk. Just keep doing what you're doing, because familiarity, actually, I heard a really great quote. Good is the enemy of great, I believe it was. And I mean, in a lot of ways, like that rings so true. And like I said, I'm freeballing here, but it's definitely one of the situations that, if you're someone who does want to step up, really step up the game, and maybe, because of what I've been doing this week, I've gotten, several hundred emails already at this point, and I'm actually, for once in my life, I think just because they're all central around certain themes, I've actually been really active on replying for once, so I'm kind of proud of that. But there is a lot of people who are like, okay, well, maybe they even work in 3D or motion graphics, but they wanted to move into effects, or maybe they want to get into feature film, or they wanted to move to a different city. Hopefully you can't hear that. I'm again next to Santa Monica Airport, so I've got planes whizzing past. And actually, Harrison Ford's plane is typically one of the ones out there. And in those situations, it's very difficult, very scary, and to want to, change your career up, change what you're familiar with, and do something completely different. But the thing is that it's going to make the difference between being satisfied with your job, in other words, loving what you do, or, basically it's a paycheck. And I know that all too well. And I've got people that I care about in my life that have a job that they literally hate every day that they get up, and they don't want to go just because they're miserable by the end of the day and they feel like shit. And the thing is that, like, at the core, a job is a job. A job is something that pays your bills and you use it to get by. But what we should, and what we do all search for, and this is something I strongly believe, is that, we all search for having that satisfaction and fulfillment in what we do. And I've seen this, and I've done it myself so many times, where if I'm not getting that fulfillment in what I'm doing, I seek it elsewhere. Okay? And what I mean by that is that, let's say that I'm not working on, I'll dumb it down to, I'm not working on movie effects and, doing Hollywood stuff. I'm working in commercials and in an area that I'm not happy with, or whatever it's going to be. So I will go home at night and end up freelancing till 3 a.m. on a project that I do care about. Okay, and that's because we find other ways to find the fulfillment, and I will do that. I'll do all the personal training I do, and I do other stuff, because for me, helping others is definitely something I love, and also just challenging myself, pushing myself is something I love. So there have been times in my career where I've tried to find a job that I'm enjoying, and I'm just not getting it. Like it might even be easy. I might actually, in a few cases, like be so bored at work because I've done all my work and everything's so, so easy at that point that I'm just not getting that fulfillment, that challenge. And you can either take easy street or you can find something a lot more difficult, a lot more challenging, but you have that satisfaction at the very end of it because you've managed to conquer it. And if you don't get that from your job, then you will go and find it elsewhere. And I've done that so many times. But then I find a job where I am getting that fulfillment. And then outside of my job, I will have the whole world around me to do whatever I want to do just because I'm getting that satisfaction. I feel great. I'm loving what I do. And it's night and day, such a difference to anything else. And not all of us have that, okay? But I think that all of us can have that. And I will just going to touch on this for a moment, but, again, earlier in my career, there were setbacks. Everyone had setbacks in terms of, well, I'm not old enough, or I'm from this country. It's very hard for me to, get jobs in, this country or that country. Whatever the situation may be, these days, there's nothing holding you back. Like, we have the internet, we have everything else. There are no restrictions other than the ones you set yourself. And you can do whatever the heck you want to do. And I know so many people who have come from nothing and have done phenomenally well, and they've done it all themselves. And it's not luck. There's luck, and then there's you making your own fate, you taking charge and doing what you want to do. And I do think that at the end, getting that satisfaction in what you do, or getting that passion, is so important. Now, when you're first starting out, or even later on, like a mentor, someone who's already had that success in the areas that you want, it's so key to be able to find those people. Because again, as you have those people who are all kind of at your level, and actually I will just say this about the average of the 5 people around you, is that maybe you're not the average of your other friends, you're not equal to your other friends, maybe you're phenomenally good, and you kind of get that satisfaction of thinking everyone looks up to me in my group and says wow, this guy or this girl is phenomenal, they're so cool, and you kind of love that praise that you're getting because you kind of feel, in one way or another that you are, I hate saying better than them, but you kind of feel like you are on a pedestal in your circle. So you kind of love feeding on the the praise that you get from these people. That can be for many reasons that can be a really poisonous thing to have. But at the same time, you can't really get satisfaction and fulfillment from that. Feeling okay, great, I'm kind of the top tier of my friendship group, and therefore I'm kind of as far as I can go is totally the wrong kind of mindset to have. For me, I would rather be the novice. I would rather be around so many successful people that I feel like the amateur. And I will just say as a side note that I've always been fascinated by people who get intimidated by others. Okay, you meet someone and they're really successful. I remember one person, I wasn't there, but this is the first story that comes to mind. But there's a certain person that kind of just very arrogant guy, and this other guy, they're all working on a movie. This other guy from San Francisco flew down to LA, and he's catching up with everyone, and everyone in the room, everyone at the bar, was basically wow, it's so great to see you, and giving him all this attention. And then instantly this other guy kind of came up to him and whispered in his ear, I'm better than you, and you're nothing compared to me, and the most ridiculous stuff that you can't imagine people kind of ever saying in real life. But you can tell that hit a trigger on that person, that to them made them feel intimidated. And you get those people who let's say you hang around some millionaires who have the lifestyle, you're next to Richard Branson or whoever you see as being the model of success, and you kind of see it this person is I'm better than this person, or this person, you start kind of justifying it by creating reasons why they got lucky, that they're only good because of the people that work for them, or whatever it's going to be. And there is the type of personality, again, I think it's a very kind of poisonous or kind of constraining kind of mindset to have. But for me, if I meet people who are better than me, which is pretty much every day, I get inspired. I feed off of that. I love it. I love meeting people who have had all this personal success, And I love that because, it makes me kind of feel like, wow, anything's possible. And yeah, it just kind of excites me and makes me feel like, cool. Like I want to go and do cool stuff now. And I think that, in my opinion, is the healthier way to go, which is you want to be hungry for success. You want to surround yourself with those people. So I don't mind being the novice. I don't mind walking in a room and, having people who are like, I could idolize or think are just so amazing. That's great. It makes me want to do better. And that's essentially what I mean when I talk about a mentor. Isn't that you have like, I don't know why, but I always think of like a blacksmith or something, and and you got the apprentice who's kind of learning to bang on some horseshoes or swords or whatever it's going to be, and they're like 13 years old. That's the image that comes to mind. But for me, it's about basically finding people who are successful in the areas that you, at that time in your life, want to grow into. Okay, and you don't need to have a mentor your entire life. I've been doing a lot of reading lately, and I'm just trying to think, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, of all people, actually, is a great one where there are so many times in his life, like, again, after reading his biography, that was so interesting for me just because, like, I had no idea, like, how successful good old Arnie, the governor of our state here in California, I didn't realize how successful he was. Like, he was a millionaire way before he ever actually made a big movie. He made his millions in real estate, and he had so much success, and he set these major goals every step of the way. From initially being 13, he decided he wanted to work in America. He wanted to act in big Hollywood films in America. He wanted to be a bodybuilder. He wanted to be Mr. Universe. And like all of these goals, it was more about setting them, and then bit by bit, kind of, as I mentioned about like building your plan, your kind of backwards engineer plan. It's exactly what he had done as well, which was kind of cool for validation, like being able to kind of build your ultimate goal and you are here, and deconstruct it down to, okay, these are the steps I need to do, time to go out and do them. And it was really inspirational reading his book just because it gave me so much insight into him, but also how he sets goals. And, for me, it was kind of like just interesting to compare the two. Not that I'm going to be Mr. Universe or anything, but just kind of seeing how other people who you might consider to be really successful, how they were able to kind of get it, or what their mindset is. And so I found it to be really fascinating for him to kind of have these extreme goals, but he would always find the person at the time that was successful in the areas that he wanted. And he would essentially not use them, but he would spend time with them and learn as much as he could. And when he got to the point where he felt better than them, he would move on to the next. And it's not necessarily a kind of like a use and abuse relationship. It's more about, you pick people that you can model. And when I say model, essentially that means that you look at someone and their success, and you essentially deconstruct what made them have that success, so that way you can mimic it. And that essentially, it's a very healthy but also a very effective way of being successful yourself. Bruce Lee, I'm going all over the place with some inspirational people here, but Bruce Lee, I think, kind of, he's probably the only person I've ever heard actually talk about how modeling is a bad thing, and you should be, essentially looking into yourself for, building that success. But I do think that if there are certain people that you find were really great at what they did, then either spending time with them or at least deconstructing what they've done can be really effective to your career. And you essentially kind of cut the fat, you filter it, you figure out the key things you can take, and then all the other stuff, you can leave behind. But it's really educational to kind of get that insight. And again, here we go, Jay-Z. Again, I read a autobiography of his, which was by a Forbes writer. It's called Empire State of Mind. Yeah, I guess I read some like very extreme books, from Arnold Schwarzenegger to Bruce Lee to Jay-Z. But that was, again, really fascinating just to kind of see someone who's very kind of calculated in their business and what they do. And I guess for him as well, kind of like he would surround himself with very successful people, and it would get to a point where he had essentially superseded them, and he'd move on to the next. And so there's a lot of guys who kind of claim to have essentially aided or helped create Jay-Z as Jay-Z, but essentially he had kind of spent his time and gotten what he could from them and then moved on. But I mainly mention these because they come to mind, but at the same time it validates what I'm talking about, which is that you find people who in that part of your life you can learn a lot from. It doesn't mean that they are your mentor and you've got to kiss their butt. It's about essentially surrounding yourself with the most successful people you can in the areas that you want to be. And instantly by doing that, you will rise up higher. If you meet someone who you get introduced to and they're like, yeah, I just made I made $5 million this year. Okay, like, again, I don't think validating yourself through money is ever a healthy thing, but just for the sake of this kind of superficial example, some people might be like, oh yeah, cool, whatever, but like, I would be fascinated to see like, cool, how did you do that, and kind of hear their story. They might be in stocks or whatever, but if someone has had some success, then that, I'd love to hear about it. And again, if someone was to say, let me show you exactly how I did this, and maybe you can apply it to what you're doing, or better yet, you're in the same industry, because typically that's who you're going to target, is people who are in areas that you want to move into. And if they were able to say like, okay, well, sit down, I'll show you how I did this. And if you were to find 5 people that were all in those areas that you want to build your lifestyle, your career, whatever you're going for, and they're all able to sit down and say, okay, well, I'll show you what I learned over 20 years, and let me teach you. And you can start to apply those bits and pieces that you learn. I will say, for me, in my career, and I don't mean this in a very arrogant kind of way or anything, but I never had a mentor earlier in my career. And this is what I mean by arrogant, is that very early into my career, I essentially would go and work at a lot of studios where I typically got positioned as like the go-to guy. Like, people would say like, oh, go to Alan, like he knows all about effects. Go to Alan, he's been doing all that kind of stuff. Like, let's go ask him, because, whatever. And so for that, I always felt like suddenly, and I regret this now, and I think it's also very silly now, but keep in mind, like, this is me at 19 years old. I've been doing it for 5 years, and 3D was very young. Me back then, to have like everyone coming to me for answers, I felt like I couldn't ask questions. Okay, and maybe it's worthwhile telling this, and this is something that I maybe have told 2 people in my life, just because it's not really that interesting, but I think it is vital here, is that, yeah, I basically felt like I couldn't ever ask questions, because I was basically the person that everyone turned to, at least, in my studio. And because of that, I had to kind of be the one to know everything and to have all the answers. And again, that was me very young. And these days, I'm the first person to put my hand up and say, wow, I don't know anything about that. I'd love to hear more. Okay, and even the most novice of people, someone who's very new to whatever we're talking about, if they have some really great insight, I am going to be the first one to listen, and I'm also going to be the first one to put up my hand. As a side note, and this is the benefit of me kind of doing this all kind of off the cuff, but this is something I mentioned in my Paris talk not too long ago, where people applying for jobs, if they don't show at least some kind of vulnerability, I find that to be very, very scary, and it kind of raises a little kind of alarm bells in my head. I had someone apply for a job at my studio about 2 years ago. And he's actually someone I've known for about 10 years, and I was convinced to hire him. Like, I'm like, yeah, okay, effects, all this stuff. Great, I'll be happy to bring you on. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? For me to ask that, I basically wanted to know how to utilize him. Like, is he a fume guy? Is he more of a dynamics and TP guy? Is he more of a scripter? Like, I had an idea of like how I could use him, but I wanted to see, from his point of view, because no one's going to know, or they should know, their weaknesses better than anyone else. Okay, and basically he came back saying, I'm the best in the world, and I'm quoting him here, I'm the best in the world at fume effects, and there's no one better than me at TP. I know everything about it. TP being thinking particles, a dynamics particle system. And he proceeded to basically say he was great at everything. And as soon as he started saying this, I instantly was like, okay, this is kind of a bit weird. And I was expecting to hear, where he's not good at. And he proceeded to basically say he was the best at everything. And for me, that was something that instantly made me just not hire him. Just because for me, like, I could tell you all my weaknesses. I'll say that, I think I'm pretty fast with fume effects, and I'm pretty strong with my compositing. I'm able to bring shots in. I've been doing it for a long time, like finishing shots and supervising large teams. But lighting, is, at least in the past, has definitely been one of my weaknesses. That I've met some people who are phenomenal at lighting, and all they've needed is to really kind of get their lighting perfect, and it makes everything kind of just fit. With me, I'm kind of usually rushing things, and I'm more about like build a crap ton of elements and massage them in comp. And again, like being able to identify your weaknesses means that you can start to focus on bettering them. But the more I know about myself, the more I know exactly how to communicate like where my strengths are. And it means that when someone's going to hire you, they know how to position you. If you tell them like you're the best at all this stuff, and then they give you shots and you're not, that is going to cause problems. But if you say like, okay, well, look, I'm not the best at lighting, they'll be like, all right, well, we've got these fantastic lighting team here. Like, why don't we get them to light your shots and you focus on the effects? And it's like, oh, wow, okay, that works great. So keep that in mind, like whatever the relationships needs to be. But the more you're able to communicate, it doesn't mean you tell everyone you suck at everything, but I think being able to kind of show a bit of balance rather than trying to sell yourself as the best at everything, that is so valuable. And so I just want to go on a bit of a tangent there, but to me, it's like such a valuable piece of information. But basically going back to what I was saying, me at 19, kind of feeling like I needed to have all the answers, that handicapped me in the biggest way, because it meant that I could never ask questions. And there were like so many talented people that I worked with. One studio I worked at was Ambience, and that place still exists in Sydney, although it's gone through like version 3, 4, 5, 6. It's very much a different place now. But when I was there, it was like there was Animal Logic, there was GMD or Garner McLaren Design, and there was Ambience. Coincidentally, they were all next door to each other on Willoughby Road in Crow's Nest, Sydney, and they were the three biggest studios in Australia at the time. And working there, so many talented people, and for me to not kind of feel like I could ever say like, wow, like that was so amazing, how do you do that? Or can I get some help with this? That is such a crippling kind of mindset to have. But I did kind of feel that, and I kind of felt like I could never, it wasn't about being too proud, it was more about, I kind of felt like I'd missed my boat, I never got the chance to ever get mentored, and it kind of sucked. And that's my fault. And that's kind of, one of those lessons learned, because now I will gladly, learn as much as I can from everyone and anyone. And I'm always going to be a student for life. But it would be so valuable back then if I were to say, okay, there's, these phenomenal men and women that I work with, and I would love just to be a sponge and learn everything I could. Now, at the same time, like being able to go and seek certain people who are phenomenal at what they do, and be able to surround myself with those people, like how successful do you think you're going to become? And this doesn't necessarily need to be just in like your art or whatever you're doing. This can be in everything. So maybe you're interested in getting into more business. I know people, like I mentor people all the time that, let's say, want to switch careers, I mentioned before, I've got a friend at Weta, he wants to break free and set up like his own small video game company and work from home. So I've now successfully helped a lot of people begin to work from home and apply the experience that I've known from that. Or again, having run a studio, I know all about how to get that work. So if you were to say, because I think everyone always has that deep down kind of like, screw it, I could set up my own company and I could do what this company's doing just as well or better than them. But most people are too afraid to do it, or they just don't know where to start. So if you were to find someone who had done that before, had launched a studio, and be able to say, hey, like, I wanted to set up my own animation studio, where do I begin? What do I need to do? How do I get the clients? How do I, what are the things I need to worry about? Because probably the number one thing I will mention is that when you start to scale up quickly on projects, like you get something big in and you need to hire 50 people, you're like, okay, I just need to hire 50 people. Then you're like, oh, I need 50 computers. And then you're like, crap, I never thought I'm going to, about the licenses, I need more licenses. And bit by bit, you got to scale up. So maybe you don't anticipate the money. And I can tell you from experience that the fastest thing, because you're going to need render nodes. And again, you might think of that. So you get all these render nodes. And I can tell from experience that it's much faster to render in the cloud these days. It might cost you 30, 40, 50 bucks, depending on what you're doing, to pop a render out. But you don't need all those extra machines that you're renting or buying. But the number one thing that I've seen this probably 4 or 5 times now, and Digital Domain and Sony have both kind of had this on a more epic scale as well, is that you don't anticipate the electricity. And when you have a diesel generator plugged in right outside your door, going 24 hours a day, trying to feed electricity in to compensate for the fact that you didn't pay attention to how much electricity that you can pump in through your facility, that is such an epic showstopper right there, and most people just don't anticipate that. So keep that in mind, that there can be little things, and just having someone around who's been there, done that, is really insightful. But on a larger scale, being able to have someone say, okay, well, typically the way I got clients was I might get variety, I might get this and this, and find out what projects are coming up. And that way I can start reaching out to all the studios who are doing it and find out who the VFX soup is, and I can then approach them and introduce our studio and say we want to do work. Or maybe I had more success by reaching out to visual effects studios who have a lot of overflow and they can't handle it all. So they look for people who are studios that are very successful in their area, and you can introduce yourself as an entity and try to get overflow work from them. Atomic Fiction, which is by far one of my favorite studios in the world, that's essentially how they initially got started. Was they got set up, and it wasn't like they were specifically going for just visual effects work from actual production studios. They were talking to Digital Domains, ILM, everyone else to see if they had additional work. They wanted to outsource some shots, and that's how we got Transformers and a few other things, and you kind of grow it from there. So it's all about that. It's all about knowing and having that knowledge. And if you have other people around you who have that knowledge, then it can be really beneficial to you. So if you're trying to do something new and you know other people who have that experience, they're very successful at what they do, then why don't you reach out to them? Why don't you say like, hey, I'm trying to do this. Do you have any insight to give? You always hear people say like, if I knew what I know now back then, like I could do all this amazing stuff. So why wouldn't you want to be a fly on the wall and say, great, well, tell me and I'll go do that. I think that's so pivotal. When I first launched my podcast, I didn't know what I was doing. It's not like I was, I'd been doing podcasts for a long time, for someone else, and I decided to go do one. I knew nothing about it. I had dabbled in some other stuff, like Artist Insight series and things like that. And I don't know, I listened to a lot of podcasts. And for me, I decided, okay, well, someone at ILM, actually, Delcio Gomez, he was telling me at lunch one day, he's like, Alan, like, you should really launch a podcast. And I'm like, that's a stupid idea. And the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, this actually would be really fun and I could give it a try, and maybe I'm going to suck at it, maybe I'm going to fail at it. But I wanted to give it a shot. And for me to do that, again, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I literally didn't know like how podcasts work in that regard. Like, where do they go? What do they do? So, I needed to go and find people who were good at what they did. One of the top podcasts on iTunes is Entrepreneur on Fire, which is John Lee Dumas. So he's one of the top podcasts. Like, iTunes guys have brought him out to Apple headquarters a lot, and basically kind of listened to anything he's got to say about how to kind of improve upon a podcast. And he's essentially one of the big authorities on podcasting. So for me, like, I knew that he had set up something called Podcasters Paradise, which was a kind of a membership mentoring kind of service. So you pay like $1,000 and you get into this thing. So for me, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to sign up, because these people, everyone in there, you're essentially becoming part of a community, so I can learn from these people. I can kind of get, learn from their mistakes and quickly kind of get up to speed. And at the same time I was doing it, Tim Ferriss, who wrote like the 4-Hour Workweek, 4-Hour Body, all those books, who's again got one of the top podcasts out there. He was trying to learn the podcast as well. So he went to John Lee Dumas and said, hey, I want to learn a podcast. So he joined Podcasters Paradise as well and kind of got educated on it. Now he could say, well, I'm one of the biggest names on the internet and I'm too good to ask questions, but being someone who's, I would assume, is pretty intelligent, he went to someone who knows what they're doing, has been doing it a long time, is successful at what they do, and decided to learn from that person. So, again, you can never be too proud, but it is more about picking where are the areas that I need to learn, targeting the things that you want to do, and then going and seeking the people who are what you would consider to be successful in those areas, so that way you can learn from them. Okay, it's kind of like, I hate to say it, but if you go to a personal trainer, you kind of usually will go to them because they are the kind of ideal image of what you want to be. If you want to get ripped, you go to you go to the gym and you find the biggest, most ripped guy, and you're like, how do I get like you? Typically, you're not, even though they may know just as much as the other people, but typically you're not going to go for someone. Let's say, and I'm not being judgmental here, but let's just say that they were kind of quite the opposite of what you're aiming for. You essentially want to go for the target product. You want them to be the target product of what you want to be. You want to say, okay, you got to this somehow, teach me, and you go from there. So yeah, maybe they're just someone who got to being big through genetics and a lot of other cheats, but that's typically what you're going to do, is you're going to model them, or you want to essentially model them. Okay, so I've rambled on for a bit, but I'm hoping, and I think all this is pretty vital, but it's more about, okay, at this point maybe you're sold and you see there's lots of potential in finding mentors. Well, how do you find them? Of course you can pay for them. I've actually been looking around a lot, and you can find paid mentors. I know there's a guy at Blizzard who does like one of my listeners. I'll give a shout out to you, Ben Rosado, and because I was just talking to you the other day, and you'd mentioned there's a guy, I think it's Kevin Tran or Kevin Tan, I'd have to check, but he does a mentorship for doing illustration, and so there is people out there who essentially will share some insight and maybe give some FaceTime to you. I think he's like $60 a month. He gives you like an hour of his time. I was curious about that, so I looked it up. But there is people out there that you can pay and do like professional ones. For me, like I've mentored in a few kind of more business mastermind groups, basically. So I've come on and more helped with people who are trying to work on their careers in a lot of different areas and want to really get a lot of success in that. That's something that I've worked with. I mentioned Neil Strauss a few times. Like, he's brought me on to mentor his group a bit, which has been really cool to go in and actually get to talk to guys who are millionaires and very successful at business, but actually give them a lot of insight into some of the kind of successes that I've had. But at the same time, I'm actually looking for a mastermind group right now for myself, because I want to kind of find my group of people, my people that I can kind of sit down and work with. And by that I mean actually as a student, as essentially as an equal to a lot of others, but we can kind of work together and bounce ideas around. There's actually a few people that I've interviewed on the podcast that I mentor and that I meet up with maybe bi-weekly, and we bounce ideas around, and I'll suggest things that they can do and so forth. And those are, very structured in terms of you're officially got a mentor and you're officially getting their time or whatever. And so for me, it's more like, they're lunches, but they're going to me for a very specific thing. But, you don't need to have those formal kind of groups. What you can have is, seek out all the people that you find to be successful and have them in your life. Now, here's the one thing. You can't really just email someone and say, hey, what's up? Like, I think that you're extremely successful and you're exactly what I want to be. So will you be my mentor? Most people who are extremely busy and successful, therefore usually busy, are not going to want to take on more work. Okay, it's just not how it works. And so, you going to someone and saying like, hey, can I essentially slow you down and kind of suck up as much information as well as time as I can? It's just something that logically is never going to fit. But I will give some advice about like how to go about getting someone probably to mentor you. I mean, I do mentor some people officially, but then at the same time, like I do think that there's hundreds of people out there that when they have questions, I'm more than happy to, even in the past day, I've probably answered 100 of them. But, answer questions and kind of give advice where I think would be good for them to do in their career. And for that to happen, I think that there's a couple of things. I think you need to be very respectful of that person's time, whether it is, you're going for, someone who's highly successful, Richard Branson or whoever. I'm using him a lot, but come on, the guy owns an island and he, essentially wants to go into space and does a lot of other crazy stuff. So that he's got lots of money and owns a lot of businesses and lives a pretty good life and has a big smile on his face all the time. That, to me, I guess, is what I would call success. To me, I guess. But yeah, I do think that someone like that, you're going to always need to be respectful of their time. So when you contact someone, again, you don't ever, like, the one thing I've taught kind of consistently on here, I like to think, is that you build relationships. You never go out and you ask for things. You don't say, gimme, gimme, gimme. And that's what I've said about applying for a job and pretty much everything else, is that you build relationships. So you essentially would approach someone and show that you've done your research. You're not just like firing out some quick email like, what's up? You look like you know what you're doing, so tell me, like, what's your secret? And I've gotten those before too, which are awesome. But you essentially show you've done your research, which means that you've done, you put in the time, okay? But at the same time, you want to show that you listen and you're going to apply what they're doing, okay? This is like a really big one, and no one is going to waste the time investing in you if you're not going to say, okay, I'm going to go off now and I'm going to do what you told me, and I'm going to come back after if I have any questions, okay? But if you basically say, okay, what you should do is you should, go and build several studio reels for every niche, go and find out what projects are out there, fire out those emails as a studio, get your branding all right, make sure you define who you are, get a website and a reel are the two biggest things for a studio. Not necessarily as an artist if you're trying to freelance, but as a studio, you need to do these things, you need to do whatever, okay? But if that person who, let's keep going with the analogy, wants to launch a studio and they're like, okay, cool, yeah, no problem. I'm going to go get business cards done and I'm going to start working on putting my company in the yellow pages and a bunch of other stuff. Like, that is not going to get you work. No one's going to look in yellow pages for work. But if you represent yourself and say, we're the studio, here's our work, they're going to go to your website and they're going to look around and kind of get a better feel for who you are. At that point, they may get you on the phone and say, okay, well, we have these projects, do you want to bid on them? Or send you an email, however it's going to go, but give you a chance to throw in a bid. And, from there, it's whether it's a reasonable bid and the work you're doing is at a competent level, then they might start to kind of hone in on a real bid, like one of the final bids that they'll budget the project around and decide who gets the project. It all starts out, very early on with having a base, and it's more about being proactive. It's not about all the bells and whistles, okay? But, if someone was to say, okay, well, I'll teach everything I know, and you just go, cool, whatever, and come back later with 100 other questions, it's like, well, did you do anything I just said? It's going to make you very reluctant to want to help that person. So being very valuable at the time, as well as showing that you're going to take the initiative and apply what they're doing, as well as being respectful of the time in the way that you announce to them. I think that I know you're busy, and give them an out as well. Like, I think when you're reaching out to someone, I think this applies to everything I do, but I will always give someone an out. I don't leave the conversation with them either being able to say yes or no. And again, I feel like most people, if they want to say no, they find it a lot easier just not to reply. Okay, so you're essentially killing the conversation. You're killing the lead. But if you were to email someone, and again, I'm going off the cuff here, but if you were to say, like, hi, Dennis Murin, let's just say, but like, hi, Dennis, I'm a really massive fan of your work and of your entire career. It's been phenomenal to see someone who came from this and has done all these amazing things. I really love the work you've done in this. And again, that's, I'm going off the cuff, but that's showing that you've done some research. You know them. You're also humbling them, which is the best way to get a response, is to not kiss someone's butt, but to be very respectful of them and acknowledge them. It will go so much further. But from there, let's say saying, I understand how busy you are and how much limited time you must have. I wanted to ask whether I could ask these 2 quick questions, and this is something that would be so grateful to me, and I will be able to apply to what I'm doing, and it will be so impactful, whatever. I understand if you're too busy to respond, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Kindest regards, Alan, or whatever. And again, I'm just kind of going off the cuff here, but you get the idea of like humbling someone, showing that you've done your research about them, acknowledging that, it's such a subliminal thing, but saying these small things, this quick thing, it is so valuable to actually say that. Just because, it will make that, if they're reading, they'll change their mind frame to, okay, this isn't a big deal, I'll read on, rather than like, okay, what's this big question these people are going to ask? At the same time, like being respectful of their time, it just shows a lot of appreciation. And I can probably, if you're interested, I actually do have plenty of very similar kind of emails I can share. I guess for some reason I've been sharing a lot of that stuff, but I find communication is so valuable, and just the email templates I've put out on the VIP list, at this point, there's got to be like 200 or 300 people that have emailed me and saying that they have gotten their dream job, or they've gotten huge success because of that stuff. And it's awesome. And I think it just comes down to like your work and everything else could be great, but it's all about how you present yourself. And also, how you kind of all the mental triggers, I guess, you hit when you contact people. Now, in this regard, I think it's so valuable, because if you want something from someone, you don't come out and say, be my mentor. That's not going to work. But if you approach someone, build that relationship by saying, can I ask this one question, or this 1 or 2 quick questions? They're going to, as long as you humble them, they're going to come back and say, okay, I appreciate your email, and to answer your question, this and this. I hope that helped. Have a great day, Alan or Dennis or whoever it's going to be. But from there, you can follow up. You then follow up and say, thanks so much. I'm already applying this, and I've already, gotten these great results. And this has been so phenomenal, and I'm so grateful. Again, there's a fine line between kiss ass and being humble. And I think humble, again, if you've read my email templates, you'll notice that I am extremely humble no matter who I'm talking to, just because it's, it shows that you're never afraid to like be that, ever gonna like put yourself on a pedestal. And in this case, you're not being ignorant or whatever. But by doing that, by doing the humble approach and showing that you've already applied with them what you intend to do, you can say like, by the way, like if I ever had like another quick question, again, I'll always be respectful of your time, but would it be okay if I fired you out an email once in a while, like every few months, if I just had a very specific question I wanted to ask? I know how busy you are, but already this has been so valuable to me. Okay, like whatever it's going to be, but that is something that for them at that point, like it was a very painless exchange previously. So for them to actually say, okay, well, that wasn't too bad. Like, yeah, if you have like one question, whatever, yeah, no problem. Okay. And from there, you can start to, again, you don't bombard people, but you can say, great, well, I'm in the middle of launching a studio, and there are a couple of things that I'm wondering about with registering a name and getting my name out there with branding. Like, what would you suggest? I know your time's very, very scarce. So even if you just want to point me to an article or a couple of keywords that might help me, okay. And the more you're pointing that out, and I know I kind of overemphasize it, but like about their time, the more they're going to say, okay, they get it, they know me. Like, yeah, I don't have much time, but at least they understand that. So they'll be grateful for this bit of time I'm going to give. And if someone lets their guard down, they might give you hours of their time, or they might say, hey, you know what, it might be easier just to get you on the phone and walk through it. Like, I'm on the treadmill, I've got 10 minutes to kill, so let's do this. So I mean, I hope that makes sense. It's definitely one of those things that what I'm trying to get at is very, very valuable. And this is like the backbone of like, if you want someone to help you, this is essentially the formula that you follow, no matter what you're doing. If you want someone to help you move a couch, this is essentially what you would say to them as well. But everything's about developing that relationship. You never ever approach someone with a gimme, gimme, gimme kind of approach. You build that relationship, and then their guard goes down, and you can actually ask for stuff. It doesn't mean you ask all the time, but it's so valuable. And I've mentioned before, like, there's certain people out there that have taken an interest in me, and we've exchanged emails, and then from there I keep that relationship going. I will say, like, you don't ever fire out, like, if you're asking for mentorship, something like that, you don't fire out emails to keep the relationship alive, because it isn't always necessarily going to be a friendship. You're asking for something, and if they are a busy person, which is probably because they're successful and that's why you're reaching out to them, you be respectful. You only approach them when you have a question, okay? And you don't need to fluff it. Like, the longer the email, the more of a burden it's going to be. If you're strict to the point, hey, I'd really love if, like, do you have any advice on this thing here? Then you can say, okay, what do you need to know? Fire out a few questions and I'll answer them, okay? Rather than me doing all the thinking, whatever. But you be respectful of that. And you don't, if someone doesn't reply within the timely manner that you have, you don't badger them. I will say that, like, I don't mind if someone emails me again respectfully and says, hey, I sent you an email like a week ago and I didn't get a response. I just wanted to send a quick one again. I know how busy you are, but just in case it landed in your spam folder. If someone says that, then I can be like, oh crap, you're right. I totally dropped the ball. I read your email, I never replied. So, blah, 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 blah. There are times when I've gotten emails which are, hey, why won't you reply? Or my favorite, they start sending emails or messages with just the question mark, kind of like a ping. Those are the kinds of times where someone says, like, respond, full stop. Those are the times that you do respond. You gladly say, dude, like, I'm busy and I'm trying to reply, or I was just about to, but now goodbye, and that's what I mean. Like, it's okay to ping someone respectfully, and I mention all this just because I find that, at least for me and a few people I've spoken to, it's definitely one of those things that if you want something, there's ways to get it, and you gotta go about it the right way. So I'll leave it there. Again, didn't make the 30 minutes, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, it's such a valuable subject, and unfortunately, like I said, this week of all weeks, I mean, I'm actually releasing this Tuesday night, rather than it being, on the Monday morning where I typically do, and that's just because I've been flat out and haven't been able to compress all my notes and organize things as much as I'd like. So, it's gone a bit longer than I expected, but I really think the information, the knowledge I'm trying to put out here, I think that there are a lot of really solid nuggets of information here that could be very valuable. And I also think that you never should be too proud to ask for help, to ask or seek mentors. I know so many people who are very successful and they still have mentors. Like, I can mention guys like Tony Robbins or other people who are, like, 10 times, 20 times millionaires, and they've all got mentors for very specific things that they want to know. I know guys who are amazing at business, and their philosophy is, if I want to know something about a subject, I go and I hire the best, or an expert in that field, and they're going to share their knowledge and get me up to speed very quickly on that. So either way, I think it's so powerful to surround yourself with people who at least are equally as passionate as you are in a certain area, so that way you bounce ideas back and forth, you push each other, you help each other grow, and more importantly, if you can find the people that are ones that you want to model and you can get access to them, your career will grow substantially. It's so important to have those people. I know many studio owners, I know a few feature film directors. I've recently got in contact with Eddie Murphy, of all people, which I might talk about on a later podcast, but that kind of whole experience, like, just being put in those positions where you have access to people that are in a whole other field and playing level, and in a lot of ways, that can be so phenomenal to you, because it will make you start to apply a lot of their experiences. And having that bird's eye view, having access to someone who has, that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of experience, who can actually say, like, you know what, this is what I've learned. Like, this is all the knowledge I've learned about this. And you can choose to take it on or you can choose to leave it. But having that second opinion from someone who counts, Like I've got friends of mine that they'll give me their opinion gladly about a lot of stuff, but I hate those feelings, but you will have them occasionally where you're like, well, you're not the end product. You're not that personal trainer who's ripped or whatever. So, in business, they're not the millionaire who, is now giving you financial advice when they can't pay the rent or, whatever it's going to be in. Typically you want it from people who are kind of the authority on it. Okay. Otherwise, you might be a bit more hesitant to take the information on, unless that's someone you really trust and you trust their opinion. Okay. So no matter what, the one key takeaway is surround yourself with the most successful people you can. You are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Okay. So why not make them people that are successful, that are where you want to be? Why not be the novice? It's very unhealthy to be the expert in your friends, in your circle. Make sure you do find people who are going to push you, that are going to inspire you and motivate you to be better at what you do. I think there's nothing better than always being outside your comfort zone and having other people around there who are going to push you to do that as well. Okay, so whatever it's going to be, I think it's so important to have a mentor, someone or many mentors that in those areas of life that you think you want to work on. Maybe you want to direct. So finding, maybe it doesn't need to be Steven Spielberg, but find someone who is a feature film director that, mightn't be the AAA director, but they can share some insight. And bit by bit, you might meet other people who are in their circle, have a lot more experience to share as well. And you start to be pulled into new areas that you would never have access to otherwise. Okay? Very, very valuable. So I hope you find this information to be helpful to you and that you can take a lot away from this. Okay? And I appreciate you listening. And this has been one heck of a week. I've got some great news to share, but I will leave it for later. Finally, I'm going to be on Chaos Group's podcast probably in the next week or so, which is CG Garage, or Garage, as you say in the US. But Christopher Nichols, who I did an interview with, he has his Chaos Group Labs podcast, and we did a really great one there. There's also some really awesome episodes with Scott Ross and other people on there as well, which is worthwhile checking out. And that is pretty much it. So lastly, if you are interested, actually, I will mention this. Complete transparency, I'm releasing, for anyone in 3D, which is a good portion of you, I'm releasing 10 to 15 hours of training material, like lessons this week. Okay, it's actually out right now. And if you go to Alan McKay, so ALLANMCKAY.com/ash, so ASH, I've put up a bunch of training material. You simply, you can watch the first video, it's 2 hours, but if you want to get the rest of it, put in your email, and then throughout the week, I'll be mailing out additional videos, scene files, a lot of really great stuff. Complete transparency, because again, I don't want to be all salesy here, but when you sign up, if you're interested, I will be giving you access to the FXTD mentorship if it's something you want to sign up for. So in other words, you have a chance if you want to, and it hasn't sold out yet, then you'll be able to have a chance to actually sign up for it. But at the same time, if you don't want to do that, then there's 15 hours of really high-end material. It's the best, highest, most advanced material I've ever put together. So, I'm mentioning that because I don't want you to kind of log in and be like, oh, what the hell, Alan's trying to sell me something. But I will mention that if you're on the list, you will get a couple of emails that say, hey, if you want to get into the mentorship, sign up. So if it's not for you, then just ignore it. But there is about 15 hours of really solid content that I think for anyone in 3D is going to find really valuable. For those of you who are not into 3D or in other areas, not effects, check it out if you want or skip ahead. But that was a lot of fun to put that together. I literally spent 6 weeks getting that stuff done. And I'm still actually recording a few extra lessons at the moment for it. So it's been a lot of fun, but pretty brutal. So that's it, I think. I've got a few really cool interviews coming up about a lot of different stuff, actually. This is going to be one of the last solo ones I do for a while. And unfortunately, I hate it, but it has been a bit tricky just because it's been pretty brutally busy the last couple of weeks. So putting in the time where I can has kind of been difficult, but I'm still trying to keep these consistent. And this is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I think it's so valuable is to have, just to kind of point this out, because like I said, I think most people, they kind of don't realize the value of asking. There's actually a TED Talk from Amanda Palmer, who's a musician, and essentially, I forget the name of the book, it's on my desk somewhere, but essentially the power of asking for help. It's not the title, but essentially that's what it's about. And I'm sure if you Google Amanda Palmer TED, it will go on about this. But, asking people for help is such a valuable and powerful thing, and it'll open up the door to so many things. And I think most of us are too proud to do that. So if you want a weekly challenge, if you want a challenge for this week, it's to find some people and go out there and ask those people. Maybe target some people that you find are your role model, or not even that, just right now where you are in your life, they've already done it, and you want some knowledge from them. I do challenge you as a bit of homework for this week to go out there and just ask those people, and don't do it in the gimme kind of way, but instead say, exactly what I mentioned before. And if you guys need, I can totally write all that stuff up and make it official so you can kind of deconstruct what I've talked about. But I would love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear your experiences with this, because I don't think there's anything more powerful than asking people for help and helping others as well, okay? Don't always be the sponge who's just taking, but like I said, I think most people are too proud, and you need to surround yourself with the best people you can. So that's it. Thank you for listening. It's been a long one, but I really appreciate you listening. And some really fantastic episodes coming up, some really amazing interviews. That's it, guys. Rock on.